You know what's crazy? People look at me now and they think I had this perfect childhood. Like, from the outside it looked fine. We had a roof, food in the fridge, clean clothes, all that. Nobody was hitting me. Nobody was screaming at me. So in everybody else's eyes, there was nothing wrong. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Sometimes the biggest pain ain't about what happened to you. It's about what didn't happen. That's how it was for me. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one night. I must have been 8 or 9. I'd just drawn this picture. It was the best I'd ever done, at least in my little kid head. Bright colors, little stick figure family, the sun in the corner with that goofy smile. I was so proud, like my chest was gonna burst. I ran to my mom, paper in my hand, grinning like crazy. She was at the sink doing dishes. I said, "Mom, look." She didn't even turn around. Just kind of mumbled, that's nice, and kept scrubbing. And man, I swear, in that moment I felt this sharp little crack inside me. It wasn't like she screamed. It wasn't like she tore the paper up. It was worse than that. It was like I wasn't even worth looking at. And here's the wild part. It didn't just happen once. Stuff like that kept happening. Birthdays with no real celebration. Tears that nobody asked about. Achievements that got brushed off like they didn't matter. Over time, you stop showing people your drawings. You stop talking about your day. You stop expecting anybody to care. That's neglect. And the messed up thing is, people don't recognize it as abuse. But let me tell you, it leaves scars deeper than anything you can see. I used to think I was just too sensitive. That maybe other kids didn't need hugs or attention or to be asked how they were doing. But every time I felt ignored, a little piece of me just shut down. I remember sitting in my room, hearing other kids on the block laughing outside, and wondering why I felt so alone when my family was right there. Like they were in the same house, but it felt like 1,000 miles away. It's like living in a house full of walls but no windows. You've got shelter, sure, but you can't see out. You can't breathe in. You're surviving, not living. And because nothing bad was happening, I thought the problem was me. I'll give you another story. There was this one time, I came home from school with tears in my eyes. Some kid had been teasing me, calling me names. I sat at the dinner table quiet, hoping someone would notice, hoping someone would say, "Hey, what's wrong?" But dinner went on like I wasn't even there. My dad talked about work, my mom fussed about bills, my brother was glued to his Game Boy. I just sat there, poking at my food, swallowing back the lump in my throat. And that's when I learned the hardest lesson. If nobody asks, don't tell. Man. Do you know how heavy that rule gets when you carry it into adulthood? That's the invisible wound right there. It's not one giant moment. It's death by 1,000 silences. People think scars come from violence or screaming, but some scars come from quiet. From the hug that never came, the "I'm proud of you" that was never said, the listening ear that was always too busy, and those scars don't fade. They just hide. The thing about being neglected is, you grow up not even realizing it was neglect. I mean, if someone asked me back then, "Did your parents hurt you?" I'd say no. I would have defended them. I still do sometimes. They weren't monsters. They just weren't there for me emotionally. But little me, she didn't know the difference. She just thought she wasn't worth the love. And that's what I carried for years. This feeling that I wasn't enough. I look back now, and I think of all the times I tried to earn their attention. Like I'd bring home straight A's, and they'd just nod like, good. I'd do extra chores, try to be the good kid, and hope maybe then they'd see me. But nothing changed. So I started hiding my needs. I got quiet. I became the independent one, the one who doesn't need help. People even praised me for it. She's so strong. She never complains. If only they knew that was just another way of saying, nobody ever listened anyway, so why bother speaking? That's what neglect does to you. It teaches you that your feelings are too much or maybe not enough. It teaches you to swallow your voice, to shrink yourself down, to disappear in plain sight, and people applaud you for it. They call you mature, responsible, low maintenance. They don't realize those are just fancy words for neglected. And you know what's worse? Neglect makes you second-guess yourself. For years I thought, maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I'm just being dramatic. Because society tells us unless you've got bruises, you weren't really hurt. But let me tell you, absence can hurt just as much as presence. The absence of love, the absence of comfort, the absence of being seen, it cuts deep, sometimes deeper. You know what's funny? I used to envy kids who got grounded. Sounds crazy, right? But hear me out. At least when your parents ground you, they notice you. At least you matter enough to get a reaction. Me? I could disappear for hours and nobody'd blink. I'd sit in my room with the door closed, and no one would come check on me. Sometimes I wondered if I walked out the front door and never came back, how long would it take before somebody noticed? That's a dark thought for a kid. But when you grow up feeling invisible, you start asking yourself questions like that. I learned real early not to cry in front of people. One time, I let the tears spill over after a rough day. My mom glanced at me and said, "You're too sensitive." That was it. No hug, no "what's wrong?" Just those words, "You're too sensitive." And damn, do you know how heavy those 3 words can sit on a child's chest? From then on, every time I felt sad or lonely, I told myself, "Stop it. You're just being sensitive." But here's the kicker. Feelings don't disappear just because you shove them down. They pile up, they rot, they start whispering lies about who you are. Neglect isn't about being hated. It's about being overlooked. It's about being treated like background noise in your own home. And when that happens, you start to believe maybe you are background noise. I'd sit at the dinner table, watching my family talk around me, and feel like a ghost. I was there, but not really. Nobody asked my opinion. Nobody asked about my day. I became a piece of furniture in my own story. And when you grow up that way, it shapes your entire idea of self-worth. You stop asking for attention, because deep down, you don't believe you deserve it. There's this memory that still stings. I was about 12. School play night. I had one line, just one. But to me it was everything. I practiced it in the mirror for weeks. When the night came, I walked out onto that stage, heart pounding, eyes searching the crowd. I saw other kids' families cheering, waving, snapping photos. My family didn't even show up. I told myself it was fine. It's just one line. It's not a big deal. But I cried in the bathroom after the show, quietly, so nobody would see. That's the thing about neglect. You learn to downplay everything that matters to you. Because if the people who were supposed to love you the most didn't care, why would anyone else? And here's the cruel part. Neglect teaches you to neglect yourself. I stopped celebrating my own wins. Got an A on a test? Doesn't matter. Drew something cool? Nobody cares. Even when I got older, landed my first job, my instinct was to shrug it off like it wasn't a big deal. Because somewhere deep inside, I learned that what I accomplish, what I feel, what I need, doesn't matter. People sometimes ask me, "Why didn't you just speak up? Tell your parents how you felt." And I want to laugh. Not in a funny way, but in that bitter, you just don't get it kind of way. When you grow up in neglect, you learn not to speak up. You learn it's safer to stay quiet than risk being ignored again. Silence becomes your shield. But the longer you wear that shield, the heavier it gets. Now as an adult, I can put words to it. Emotional neglect. But back then, it was just normal life. I didn't even realize something was wrong. I thought that's just how families were. And that's the scariest part. When neglect is your normal, you don't even know you're bleeding. I remember watching TV shows where the mom hugged her kid after school, asking about their day. Or dads showing up to ball games with signs and cheers. I'd sit there with this ache in my chest, thinking, do parents really do that? It felt like watching a movie from another planet. I couldn't imagine being cared for like that. Instead of hope, I felt shame. Like, maybe I didn't deserve that kind of love. Maybe I wasn't good enough for it. That's how neglect tricks you. It doesn't just leave you empty. It convinces you that emptiness is all you're worth. Looking back now, I realize how sneaky neglect is. Abuse leaves marks people can see. Neglect, it leaves marks only you can feel. And sometimes, you don't even realize where those marks came from until years later. I used to sit in classrooms, staring out the window, daydreaming. Teachers would say, "She's so quiet, so well-behaved." But what they didn't know was, being quiet was survival. Nobody at home asked about my day, so why would I share it with anyone else? Quiet kids. People call us easy. But sometimes that quiet is just a cover for loneliness. You know what else? I carried a lot of guilt about even calling it neglect. My parents weren't bad people. They weren't cruel. They just didn't know how to be emotionally present. My mom worked herself to the bone,